Holocaust Memorial Day with a moment of silence, and we light a candle in memory of Lori Gilbert Kay, who was slain in her synagogue last week in Poway, California. In 2019, she was murdered simply because she was a Jew, and she is forever remembered by her congregation and her friends as a teacher of radical empathy.
My name is Larry Entkin. In 1947, a team went from Canada to the DP camps of Europe to select tailors. My father, Max Entkin, headed that team. We will always remember their story.
My name is Faye Kiefer. I came to Canada in October 1st, 1948, but I'm really not a tailor. Always remember me.
My name is Isaac Applebaum. My father was Harry Applebaum. He was a tailor, came to Canada in 1948, settled in Winnipeg, my mother, my father, and me. I want you to always remember our family story.
My name is Susie Schlanger. My father and mother, Jonas and Mary Schlanger, came to Canada with the Tailor Project. I hope you will always remember them.
My name is Helen Goldfarb. My husband is Harry Goldfarb. He was a tailor, and we came to Canada with our little son in November 1948. I want you always to remember our story.
My name is Abigail Bloomberger. My great-grandfather Meyer was too young to be a tailor when he left home, but was able to come to Canada through the Tailor Project. He came to Montreal with my bubby's mother, Chana, and their son, Larry. I hope you will always remember his story.
Before we talk about this evening's programs, let us first recognize the indigenous land that Holy Blossom is on. It is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. This is going to be a very solemn event this evening, so can I ask you all, before we go any further, check your cell phones. Let's make sure they're all on silent. We wouldn't want a particularly emotional moment tonight be interrupted by the sounds of cell phones going off. We recognize public service at tonight's event and ask you to welcome those who are doing public service for us, starting with the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Carolyn Bennis, right over here. And we have two members of the Ontario Legislature with us tonight. Jill Andrew, right over here. And Aris Babikin is over here as well. And we are incidentally in the riding of St. Paul's tonight. As a resident of St. Paul's, I'm delighted to see my Member of Parliament and my member of the Ontario Legislature both here this evening for this very important event. Tonight we gather here on the evening before Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, to commemorate the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and pay tribute to the survivors who rebuilt their lives in Canada. This event also brings together for the first time the individuals and families affected by the original Tailor Project immigration program, providing them with an opportunity to share their stories of perseverance, survival, and success with the world. During our programs this evening, we're going to hear from Darren Sukonik, the Holy Blossom Vice President, Larry Ankin, whose late father Max Ankin's story is the common thread that unites us all together here this evening. 4 families that are directly connected to the Tailor Project who will share their incredible stories with us, some for the very first time. And of course, the Prime Minister himself will be here. We should say that, well, you see the weather out there tonight. He's being held up, no doubt some weather-related thing, but he's expected to be here within about a half an hour. And of course, when he arrives, we will ensure that he gets his chance to speak. We'll also get a sneak peek of a documentary created by Impact Labs about the Tailor Project and take part in a prayer led by Rabbi Yael Splansky. Let us begin. Those of you who are able, please rise and let's sing our national anthem.
Dignitaries, past presidents of Holy Blossom Temple, clergy, Tailor Project family members, and to all of our guests. My name is Darren Sukonik. I'm the Vice President at Large of the Board of Directors of Holy Blossom Temple, and tonight it is both my privilege and my pleasure to welcome you here. Tonight we will be hearing a story, multiple stories. For some of us, it will be the first time, and for others, it will be a retelling. And it is an amazing story of the over 2,000 people who were brought from displaced persons camps as tailors to Canada. But not only is it a story of history, it is a story of today, because these stories remind us of our obligations, the obligations we have to rescue those who are in need, to welcome outsiders, and to help integrate immigrants into our community, into our home. It is said that whoever saves one life saves the entire world. And tonight, many of us will learn more about Max Ankin, a person who led the efforts that saved many worlds. Not only will we hear about those efforts, but we'll also have an opportunity to meet those worlds. We are joined tonight by over 300 family members of the Tailors. And we'll hear their wonderful stories and carry them with us. It's my honor tonight to introduce Larry Ankin, son of Max Ankin. And thank you. I will try to make the introduction brief. because there is so much that could be said. But I do want to note that Larry Ankin began his leadership career as president of the Holy Blossom Temple Youth Group, which led him into the Toronto Jewish Youth Council, which came under the umbrella of Canadian Jewish Congress. All of these involvements and interactions heightened his awareness, not only of social issues, but Jewish issues, and Larry met passionate leaders who inspired and educated him about the community, about Israel, and about the terrible effects of the war that was having on the Jewish people. Canada was still then, at the end of the Second World War, both an anti-Semitic place and resistant to Jewish immigrants. These were the issues that filled his life during his formative years, his university years. Larry graduated in 1950 from the University of Toronto with a Bachelor of Commerce, and he entered the family business, where he spent his entire business career. Larry was a member of Temple on Shea Shalom with his wife Sharon and their family in Hamilton, Ontario. But in addition to the business success, Larry's life was filled with community success. He was the chair of the Jewish Social Services, president of the Family Service Agency of Hamilton Wentworth, and on the Social Planning Council of Hamilton. He carried forward his love of education. He participated in the MBA program at McMaster University, and later was chair of the McMaster School of the Business Advisory Committee. At the age of 70, he began a Master's of Social Work at University of Toronto. An age when many of us may be thinking more about golf than of pursuing a new degree. And then finally, he fused together his passion for community and his passion for education, and he initiated the research into the Tailor project. And he led the project, he assisted with the funding of the project, and we welcome him here tonight to speak to us about it. Thank you.
I have been asked frequently, why was I interested in this project? Without memory, there is no culture. Without memory, there would be no civilization, no society, no future. Elie Wiesel. I honor my father, Max Enkin, with this project and welcome my brother and many of my family. Let's begin with the circumstances and events of 1947-48. The war was over, and knowledge of the Holocaust was fully evident, in which was committed unprecedented crimes that would wounded humanity to its core, la vie. Yet Canada, as well as other countries, maintained the prevailing anti-Semitism, while countless Jews languished in the DP camps of Europe. Israel was yet to have the open policy Jews now enjoy. Only 5,000 Jewish refugees were permitted to enter Canada from 1933 to 1947. I was active in the Jewish community, as noted, as president of Holy Blossom Temple Youth and of the Toronto Jewish Youth Council. We faced anti-Semitism at home and the hope for a new state of Israel, but I don't think our memories really gave us much thought about the Holocaust at that time as youth.
My mother spent her 20s uprooting trees in Siberia, as my husband Mark and I learned by chance when we were landscaping our first home. They made their way back to Poland after the war, only to discover that few members of their respective families had survived. My mother lost her parents and her 3 siblings. My father was one of 9 siblings. He lost all but 2, as well as his parents. As living in Poland no longer held the promise for them of a safe future, They were housed in a displaced persons camp in Austria, in Steyr. They returned to Poland after the war ended, only to find that their families had perished and their homes had been expropriated by former neighbors. Pogroms in Poland were rampant, making reintegration back into Polish life as Jewish survivors impossible. I know little of my parents' wartime experiences other than brief sketches, as any recall of those years was too painful for them to share. Early on, I learned that questions about family and the war would be met with tears and an inability to recount those experiences. Survivor guilt may have accounted in part for reluctance to share these experiences with us. My father suffered from anxiety manifested by somatic complaints for as long as I can remember. Or perhaps they felt it was best to forget and focus their attention and energies on surviving in a new country where the language and customs were initially quite foreign to them. I believe that the years of the DP camp were likely ones during which my parents could gradually come to terms with having survived the devastating Holocaust. I say this as a new life was born there with the promise and hope that only a child can bring after enduring such losses. My brother was born in that DP camp in 1947. He recalled having been told that they slept on a hammock above the floor because of the rodents that scurried around at night. I also knew so little of how it came to be that my parents came to Canada in 1948. The fact that my parents could attribute their acceptance to immigrate to Canada due to the efforts of the Canadian Jewish Congress and Max Aiken was unknown to me until only recently when I read about the Tailor Project in the Holy Blossom Temple Bulletin. My parents arrived in Montreal in June of 1948, having crossed the Atlantic on the Marine Falcon, a ship built originally to transport troops overseas. Pier 21 in Halifax served as their entry point. They were put on a train to Montreal. It was spring, the flowers were in bloom. Through the support of JIAS, the Jewish Immigrant Aid Services, my parents and brother were housed in a single room with a host family, which had a flat on St. Urban Street. JIAS gave each refugee $25 to start a new life. They had 1 year to pay this amount back after being employed. They lived with this host family for 3 years, sharing a single bathroom and kitchen. Once my father was earning enough to afford a small apartment, the family moved to a flat on de Bouillon Street in Montreal, in the area known today as the Plateau. In those days, this area teemed with Jewish immigrants speaking Yiddish, a language which made my parents feel at home. My father had developed skills as a tailor prior to the war. My mother, too, had worked as a seamstress in her uncle's tailoring shop. One of my father's first jobs in Montreal was with the Timothy Eaton Company. At that time, Eaton's was involved in manufacturing some of what it sold, and my father worked as a tailor in ladies' clothing. By the time I was born in 1952, my parents had settled into life in Montreal. My first language was Yiddish. My parents spoke Yiddish at home and with their friends. Their friends were all survivors, greenies as they were known. These friends, in essence, became family. By all accounts, my father took his trade very seriously. There would have been no question that he would have easily met the criteria for the garment worker scheme of sewing a buttonhole. My father dressed impeccably, wearing a shirt, a tie, and a sport jacket, no matter the occasion. My father always had an interest in fashion. He took me shopping each September before the high holidays for a new outfit to wear to synagogue. When I first read about the Tailor Project through the Holy Blossom Temple Bulletin, I had no expectations that my parents were part of this program. I was frankly shocked to learn that my parents were rescued by the Tailor Project and that their names were on the manifest of the Marine Falcon, bringing a number of tailors to work in the Canadian garment industry. Since that time, I discovered that the parents of a close friend here in Toronto also came through the project, and that they were in the same DP camp as my parents and ended up living in Montreal within close proximity to our home. 2 weeks ago, I spoke to another close friend who informed me that his parents had also arrived in Canada in April 1948 from a DP camp in Austria. Though close friends, we had been totally unaware of this connection and all of us had made this discovery as a result of just hearing of the Tailor Project through Holy Blossom Temple. The Tailor Project has certainly given me a piece of a larger puzzle about my parents' experiences before they came to this country to start a new life. I'm forever grateful to the Canadian Jewish Congress and Max Einken for his leading role in the Tailor Project, and to Canada for having accepted the Jewish Tailor refugee families. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anne Dublin. It's truly an honor to stand here on the bema at Holy Blossom Temple.
My name is Max Dublin, and the jacket that I'm wearing was made for me by my father, Morris Dublin, in 1975 when I was in graduate school. The amazing thing about it is not that it's lasted this long, but that it still fits.
Our father, Morris Jacob Dublin, was the son of a poor shoemaker in the small city of Sosnowiec in southwest Poland. After his bar mitzvah, he was apprenticed to be a tailor, for he couldn't continue in school and had to help support his family. After a number of years, he had learned his trade and set up a little shop of his own. Soon afterwards, in January 1939, he married our mother, Rose Gale. They had only a few months of peaceful married life. In September 1939, the Germans invaded Poland, and thus began the Second World War. Our parents, along with Dad's sister Paula and her husband, made the fateful decision to flee Poland for the Soviet Union. Until Germany and the Soviet Union went to war in 1941, their lives were relatively peaceful. Dad bought a small used sewing machine, set it into the front window of their little apartment, and waited for business. Now, this machine was a manual one, so while Mom turned the wheel, Dad did the sewing. Thus, they eked out a living and survived their first 2 years in the Soviet Union.
When war was declared between the two countries, Dad was drafted into the Soviet Army, and Mom was left alone with a newborn baby, our sister Helen. At first, Dad was assigned to hard labor in a brick factory. He wasn't used to that kind of work. Plus, the food was very poor. He contracted scurvy. The doctor told him to eat raw onions, and that advice cured him. Then he had a stroke of luck. A Soviet army officer befriended him and asked him, in Yiddish, "Moshe Dublin, do you have a trade?" My father answered, "Yes, sir, I am a tailor." "Well then," the officer replied, "I will find more suitable work for you." The officer was as good as his word. Dad was transferred behind the lines to a workshop to repair uniforms. He was able to barter extra work he did there for better food and even managed to send some money back to my mother. His skill at tailoring probably saved his life.
In 1945, as the war in Europe was drawing to a close, Polish Jews residing in the Soviet Union were allowed to return to Poland. By that time, Mom and Dad had lost their first daughter, but our sister Helen was born in January 1945. Along with Dad's sister Paula, they returned to Poland. They thought they might be able to rebuild their lives, but that was not to be. After the pogroming Celts in 1946, they decided to leave Poland for good. With the help of the Bricha, what I call the Jewish Underground Railroad, They made their way through Czechoslovakia and finally arrived in a DP camp in Austria. The conditions in the DP camps at first were deplorable. In our father's memoirs, he wrote,
"In Salzburg, we lived in the displaced persons camp called Franz Joseph, which before the war had been a military barracks. The life wasn't easy, and besides that, we had a child of 16 months. The joint supplied us with everything we needed. We couldn't find any work. We waited because we were hoping that in a short time we could leave. We wanted to go to another country where we could settle. However, we were sent to another DP camp called Riedenburg, which had also been a military barracks. So we waited." Our father wrote more. "In Riedenburg, we lived in difficult conditions. My wife was pregnant. I found work as a tailor and we waited to go to Canada. But the waiting list lasted until 1948. Meanwhile, my wife gave birth to twins. We were worried about how to raise 3 small children under these circumstances. We were living in a small room which had been a stall for horses. There were only 2 wooden beds with mattresses filled with straw, a baby carriage, a small table, and 2 chairs.
You can understand how our family was desperate to leave the DP camp and go to Canada. And then along came Max Enkin with his delegation to find tailors to come to Canada. Dad was chosen as a tailor, although he had 3 children, and that broke the rules. Our Aunt Paula was also chosen as a dressmaker. So our whole surviving remnant was allowed to come to Canada. Who knows how long we might have waited if it weren't for the Tailor Project? Who knows what might have happened in the meantime? I once asked our mother what it was like on the ship with Samaria coming to Canada. She smiled and answered, "They treated us very well on the ship. It was the first time in almost 10 years that we had decent food to eat."
Decent food on the voyage across the Atlantic after almost 10 years of hunger, homelessness, freezing cold, danger, and losing most of our immediate and extended family was a welcome change for our family of Holocaust survivors. But it was by no means the end of the struggle, if not literally to survive, but to begin to live again. It must be remembered that there were no government programs for refugees in those days, not even OHIP. The Jewish charities were able to help a bit, for instance, by finding some sort of lodging for the survivor families, but their resources were strained.
When we arrived in Toronto, our family ended up in a 1-room, cold-water attic flat in a house on Huron Street. 1 or 2 days after our arrival, our father began working at Lloyd Brothers on King Street West. From his $1 an hour wages, 10% was deducted every week from his pay envelope to reimburse the tailors' union that had put up the money for our passage. We were safe and no longer hungry, but it was a huge struggle to finally create a decent, normal life.
As soon as he was able, Dad augmented his salary by doing piecework at home in the evenings and doing alterations for a menswear store on the weekends. 3 jobs, and with all that, he found the energy to take Anne and me to the Boys and Girls House Library on St. George Street on Sundays. Even after he was able to scrape together enough money to open a cleaning and tailoring store, he continued to work crushingly long hours, 80-hour weeks, until he finally retired. When one thinks of a tailor, the image of a hero may not readily come to mind, but I believe that our father and all the other tailors who came over under the auspices of the Tailor Project were indeed heroes in the struggle to provide for their families after the unthinkable horrors they had somehow managed to survive in Europe.
Good evening. I'm Ed Applebaum, and this is my brother Isaac. Our parents, Chaim and Chela Applebaum, came to Canada through the Tailor Project. My parents didn't know much about Canada. The fact is, they were both Auschwitz survivors who lost all their living relatives during the war. What my mother knew about Canada came from her experience in Auschwitz, where she worked for a time in the main storage building, which housed all the belongings of those unfortunate arrivals to the concentration camp. Ironically, that building was given the name Canada, since it was associated with Canada, the land of plenty. Canada had an almost mythic quality about it, a quality my mother always associated with being a good place amidst a lot of horror. When the opportunity arose to come to Canada through the Tailor Project, she became the driving force behind our family coming. The only obstacle was that they wanted tailors, and my father wasn't a tailor. He was a survivor, one who supported his wife and newborn son by moving and trading supplies and scarce commodities between the different sectors in war-torn Europe controlled by the Allies after the war. I can't say exactly how he convinced them that he was a tailor, but I can say how grateful we are that our family was given the chance to come to Canada, the land of plenty.
I came to Canada from Bergen-Belsen DP camp in 1948 as a one-year-old with my parents. I grew up in Winnipeg in a world of war, displacement, and renewal. All my parents' friends had spent World War II in either concentration camps, living in forests, or at different labor camps, mainly in Siberia. The community was drenched in loss, but they were ready for a new life, although some were not able to reattain their good health to fully begin their lives again. I remember everyone as being very happy to be in Winnipeg and as far away as possible from Europe. I still remember the evenings when all the Jewish folk in the Carmen apartments in Winnipeg's North End would get together to watch the Ed Sullivan show Toast of the Town in the Hecht family's apartment. They were the only Jewish family in the building to own a television set, and all of us kids would be there sitting on the floor with the adults behind us, sitting on chairs, laughing, enjoying, and in total awe at the beauty we could all now experience through this new technology, the TV, in this wonderful country, Canada. In January 1979, my mother was a witness in a war crimes trial taking place in Düsseldorf, West Germany. Since my father had passed away in 1973, I became my mother's official companion. That meant a first-class Lufthansa air ticket and all my expenses paid by the German state. My mother gave testimony at the trial of Bloody Birgitta, so named by the German press. Birgitta was a guard in the women's section in Auschwitz. After the last day of testimony, a reporter for the Stuttgart Zeitung asked my mother for an interview. I accompanied them to a coffee shop across the street from the courthouse, and my mother answered his questions. She became very loud and passionate when answering, and I could see and hear the depth of her pain and anger. She didn't care that everyone in the coffee shop could hear her loud and clear. I sat there cringing in awe and had to leave the table because I felt everyone's eyes riveted on us. In 1986, I showed a photo installation at the Art Gallery of Ontario here in Toronto. The piece is called Move. Many of the photographs show faces of people from different races and ethnicities that over the centuries had been forced to move against their will from countries they were born and raised in. The show also contained a photo of my mother's arm with her Auschwitz number tattooed on it. My mother was in Toronto at the time, and I took her to see the show. The evening before we went, I told her what the show was about, and I could see she was skeptical. How could photographs convey what everybody had really suffered? I left her alone in the gallery space and then returned after a while. She kept looking at the work, and while turning around, she looked me in the eye, and as she continued turning, she nodded. That was all I got, and that was all I needed. I continued doing artwork on Holocaust and anti-Semitism for years after.
My father, Chaim, was a very distant and closed-off man. It's not hard to imagine why that was the case. He was a man that was brutally tortured at Auschwitz, but had the will and the endurance to survive. In today's world, men like him would be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and receive treatment. But we all know it was a different world back then. The closest I ever felt to my father was ironically through his tailoring. On Saturday afternoons, my father and I would sit around the kitchen table, and he would dump out several hundred little cloth tags, or pieces as he called them, on the table. Tailors were piece workers, and he was paid by the piece. I would carefully sort and organize the pieces and put them into separate envelopes for him so he could get paid. It was like a game for us. It might have been the only time I ever saw him genuinely smile and felt real warmth between us. So, I started by saying that my father was not a tailor. However, after all those years working in the factories, he learned his trade. Outside in the lobby, I would invite you to see one of my father's creations, a beautiful black Persian lamb coat with a mink collar. He handmade the coat for my mother and packed it full of insulation to withstand the cold Winnipeg winters. All that extra insulation made the coat almost too heavy for my mother to wear. But I like to think that it was his way of showing her how much he loved her. The Tailor Project gave my parents a chance for a new life in this wonderful country. Whenever I would tell my mom that she should take a holiday somewhere warm during those long Winnipeg winters, she would say to me, "Winnipeg is my Florida, Eddie." Like her, we are both very proud Canadians and happy to share a bit of our past with you tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Faye Kiefer, and I'm a Holocaust survivor. It's hard to tell my life story in a few minutes, what I suffered through years. But I will try. I was born in Poland in 1928. I am now 91 years young. My parents and grandparents lived in a small town for generations. I had wonderful parents, Nachum and Sarah, a sister Rochelle, and a brother Israel, and many other close relatives and friends. I was an excellent student and had high aspirations. But when the Germans invaded Poland, all my aspirations were shattered. In a few weeks, Germany occupied Poland, and at once the Nazis enforced their laws. Jewish children were not allowed to go to school. We had to wear the yellow Star of David on our outerwear and yellow armband, so everybody could identify as Jews. The neighbors who lived next to us our whole life became looters. Just imagine, they took whatever they wanted. Furniture, food, anything could be said, and you couldn't say anything. We had no rights to complaints. Humans without human rights. Poland was a poor and anti-Semitic country, and Polish people were happy to get rid of the Jews and take over all their possessions. Many of them became collaborators. A few months later, we were forced to leave our home and walk 12 kilometers to a ghetto, Varanovo. We were allowed to take 2 small suitcases. The place we came was horrible. Small houses for 15 people in a house with no electricity, no water, no heat. We slept sitting on the floor because there was no room to lie down. We still didn't know what was awaiting us. June 21st, 1942 is one of the many dates that I can't forget. In the morning, a truck full of German soldiers and Ukrainian collaborators came into the ghetto and announced over their loudspeakers that everyone has to come out with their documents. Anyone that didn't come out on their own accord would be shot. We didn't know that during the night they brought in farmers to dig mass graves. As soon as we came out into the marketplace, the Germans with automatic weapons assembled us to walk straight or to the right. My family had to go to the right, but my grandparents and friends and family had to go straight. There they were all killed. Within a few hours, 1,200 people were murdered. I heard every shot. Their screams remain in my memory forever. After the massacre, my parents decided to risk our lives and escape the ghetto. And that night we did. My father knew many farmers, and we hoped they would be able to help us. There was a law against hiding Jews, and the penalty was death. It was very dangerous for the farmers to do it. Some helped with food, but there were 5 of us, and there was no place to hide. One night we came to a farmer, and we asked for help. He said, "I can help you. In my backyard, I dug a hole to hide a pig, but now I have killed him, and you can hide there." The Germans would come by and take all the animals from the farmers. That's why he killed the pig. Just imagine a hole only covered with branches. That place had been made for 1 pig, and 5 people hid there. I have never seen so many frogs in my life because the hole was full with water. At night, my parents would go out and beg for food because this farmer didn't have enough food to feed us. We never knew if my parents would return and if we'll get some food. After a few weeks, the farmer asked us to leave. We understood. He worried about his family. We tried to hide during the day and walk during the night, but the winter was coming. My father knew someone who arranged to take us to the Vilno ghetto, about 50 kilometers away. We came to a living hell. There was no place to live and no food. We were living in the street. It was awful, but we got lucky and got taken to work. Every morning, rain or shine, were assembled at the ghetto gates, and like animals, counted and taken to work. We were slaves in modern times. I had to walk 6 kilometers every day to work. We were not allowed to walk on the sidewalk, only on the road. And cobblestones are difficult to walk, especially if your shoes are torn. I was only 15 years old, and from early morning till 5 o'clock, I dug ditches to hide Germans' heavy weapons. Our guard was sadistic. He had satisfaction in swearing at us and beating us with a leather whip. And the nuts were by the end. Every day, a few people were badly beaten, open wounds. And one day, I got it. I was so badly beaten, my head and legs had open wounds, blood running all over. There was no medical help. When wounds were opened, they got infested with lice. But next morning, we had to go to work to receive a piece of bread. Mother used to tear pieces from a bed sheet and push it into the open wound in my head to retrieve the lice. It was very, very painful. One day I came home, but my mother never returns. Never returned from work. We never knew what happened to her. We were devastated. We knew she was taken away, but life had to go on. A few weeks later, I came home to find that the rest of my family had been taken away while I was at work. I never saw my brothers, sister, or father again. Since I was alone now, I decided to run away. This morning, I was sent to work on the railroad and setting down the railroad tracks. It was very hard work. I was very hungry and ate my piece of bread. Then I took off the yellow Star of David from my coat and the yellow band off my arm. If I would be caught, I would be put to death. That was the penalty. I had nothing to lose. That was August 1943. I still couldn't imagine what was waiting for me. Please try to understand. A 15-year-old girl, all alone, surrounded by enemies, and trying to find where to go. I started to walk out of the city, and it was getting dark. I came to a crossing, and I didn't know which way to go. Frightening. In my mind, I had a plan to go back to the farmers close to my city, but I didn't know which way to go, and asking for direction was out of question. I would be arrested or informed on. I knew I had to go south, but I was about 60 kilometers from where I wanted to be. I walked nights and hid during the day, mostly in the cornfields or barns, always hungry and afraid. One night I came to a barn, and in the morning the farmer found me. He was very angry and went back to his house and brought a piece of paper. It was a notice that said, if you find a Jew and bring him to the police station, you'll get 10 kilos of sugar and 10 kilos of salt. That would be reward. That was the reward. I begged him to let me go. I appealed to his conscience. You will have to live with your life knowing that you killed an innocent girl. What will your children say about their father, the murderer? What will the priest say when you come to confession? Somehow it worked, and he let me go. I was hiding in the forest under branches that covered me from the view. I didn't have any other clothing to change into what I wore. It's all I had, covered in dirt and lice. How horrible. I envied the field mice and the birds in the sky because they were free. I was being hunted like an animal or criminal. Why? What was my crime? To be born Jewish and not to have my own country? Because if we would have our own country, the Holocaust would never happen. Many times I visualized if I would be free, have a family, clean clothes, food, and go back to school. But it was only a dream. I had to face reality and continue to fight for my life. I lived this way for months and months in the woods. It was terrible. One day I was attacked and raped by 2 Polish men. I must have fainted because I don't remember them living. They must have left me for dead. When that happened, I decided to die. I didn't want to live anymore. Walking at night, I saw a little light in the distance, and I didn't even care if there was a police station. I just couldn't go on anymore. But with all the misery, miracles do happen. I approached the house with a little light, and in desperation, I knocked at the door. A young man answered and asked my name. When I told him my name and from where I am, he said, "Oh my God, before my mother passed away, she told me if anyone ever comes here from your family, that I should do everything possible to help you. She said your parents were our true friends who helped us when times were bad." The young man made a hiding place for me in the loft in a barn, and I was hiding in the hay there day and night until a neighbor overheard us talking and asked if the man is hiding Jews, and for hiding Jews was death penalty. Now it was clear that I had to live for my safety and his safety. The young man told me to go to the west. Keep on going to the west. He said, when I'll cross the swamps, I will find the partisans. I didn't even know what a swamp was, but I sure found out. I didn't. I reached the swamp, and you have to imagine every time I was walking only at night. So at night you fall in the swamp, and I didn't know where I was. But I reached the swamp and tried to walk through the freezing cold mud, my feet sinking in with each step, until I found a bit of dry ground and I fell asleep. I was exhausted. Once again, another miracle saved my life. because if a partisan spy had not walked by when he did, I would surely have frozen to death. The water in my boots froze. As I stood up, the skin on my legs peeled off. We tried to remove my boots, but finally he had to cut the boots off. It was so horribly painful as they were frozen into my legs, leaving raw skin. The partisan carried me on his back and took me to his home, and his home was deep in the forest. His wife tried to relieve my pains and wrapped my legs with rags. She wrapped my feet with rags too, and these were my new shoes. The next day, I was taken deep into the woods where the partisans were. After many more months of suffering, I was liberated from the Russian army in April 1944. The first thing I did, I went to my hometown. I will never forget how heartbroken I was. I felt so alone. I wondered why I had to fight so hard to stay alive. A few days later, a few Jewish people came out of hiding. In our town, before the war, was there about 1,500 Jewish people. Only 14 survived. I was lucky after the war. I found my mother. She survived Auschwitz. But my father's sister and brother were all guests. Dear people, at this time, I would like to honor my little brother, whose parting words gave me courage and strength in my struggle to survive. My brother Israel was a child genius. His teachers knew that one day he could accomplish great things. He could solve the mathematical problems that adults couldn't do it. He would say, and everybody asked him, how are you doing it? I don't know how to do, but it's very easy. He also could foresee future. When the Germans came, he warned us, sell everything you can and buy a gun. You will need this when you join the partisans. We didn't even know what partisans are. We thought a child, you're just making up stories. The last time I saw my little brother, he was 8 years old. We were talking, and he said to me, I won't survive. I won't, but you will, to me. It was his voice that I heard in my mind when I was fighting for my life. Without his words, I couldn't go on. His last words that said, you must survive because you need to tell our story, what they did to us. After the war, when I was reunited with my mother in Bergen-Belsen at the big camp, she told me that when they arrived in Auschwitz, that was so clean, the orchestra was playing. That was in Auschwitz. The children were given chocolate milk to drink. My brother said to my mother, don't you see this is a trick? This is too good to be true. This will be the last time I drink. My mother couldn't understand why he said it. The children were taken away. They were taken to the gas chambers. He knew before that it was a trick. In 1948, I was lucky to come to Canada. the most wonderful country in the world. I came to the Tailor project, and I am telling the story as my brother wanted. Although the story is in the past, Holocaust survivors feel it every day. A survivor goes to a party, it seems quiet, but is crying within. When I am invited to a large family gathering, I sit and visualize how wonderful it would be if my sister and brother would be alive with their families to celebrate happy occasions. However, this is only a fantasy, and I have to face reality, which is loneliness. A Holocaust survivor goes to a funeral. He cries not only for the deceased, but for those who loved ones who didn't have a funeral. They were murdered, thrown in mass graves, burned alive, gassed in the gas chambers, and starved to death. We cry for the young men and women who sacrificed their lives so we can be free today. A survivor is at ease with other survivors. They understand each other because they both lived through the horrors of the Holocaust. Today, the Holocaust survivors who were once young and energetic are now old and sick. We have too much time on our hands to think of the past. We live with horrible memories. Pardon, that means that. Horrific nightmares and sleepless nights. We cry in silence, but we put on a happy face to go on with life. You can wipe your tears from your eyes, but the ache in your hearts remains forever. In October 1953, over 60 years ago, I became a Canadian citizen. We celebrate because we were so happy to be citizens of Canada, the most beautiful country in the world. Only people who were persecuted can appreciate this freedom. Let's hope it will remain like that forever. We picked up the fragments of our broken lives, and although it was not easy, we came to Canada to build a new life. We were young, free, and willing to work, and did the very best we could. In the beginning, it wasn't easy. No language, no money, no family. I got a job in a factory for 30 cents an hour. That was the going price. That was the going rate, I'm sorry. I hoped for better times. After work, I went to night school. I got married. I have a family. We brought up a new generation of very fine people, productive citizens who contributed a lot to the prosperity of our country. We are very proud of them. I have wonderful Canadian friends who lived a life here in Canada with their families. I don't expect them to fully understand or comprehend what it means to be a human without human rights, to be treated worse than animals. It's impossible to imagine unless you have gone through the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, I was beat, starved, raped, made homeless, orphaned. My youth was taken, but they could not break my spirit, my decency, and my hope. Only people who live under dictatorship can appreciate the freedom of democracy. But thank God for every day I am in Canada. A wonderful, beautiful life. My dear friends, remember, you are a new generation. Guard your freedom. Respect your fellow man. Never hate. Hate only brings sorrow. Don't judge a person by their color of skin or religion. Learn to understand and tolerate and try to bring peace to each other. I beg you, if you meet a Holocaust denier, tell them you met a Holocaust survivor. I thank you so much.
Oh my, I'm tempted to say thank you and good night, but we have more. I know I don't have to say this, but I'm going to say this anyway. We can't imagine the courage that it took all four of our presentations tonight to come forward and share their stories, some of whom, Faye, have never done it before. You are a generous and welcoming audience of 1,000, but you're still 1,000 people, and they did it, and it was phenomenal. And how about another round of applause for everybody tonight? Oh my gosh. Oof. Great. Okay. Impact Labs is a social purpose agency and incubator of this initiative. It's been working with Larry Ankin to create a documentary that collects and conserves the personal accounts of impacted persons, their families, and multiple generations of descendants of the Tailor Project. We're now going to have an opportunity to see a trailer of the documentary. It follows the personal journeys of individuals and families directly impacted by the Tailor Project, some of whom, as you know, are Holocaust survivors. This is about 8 minutes long. Get comfortable, and let's watch.
My father was a tailor, all his brothers were a tailor. I told my father, I don't want to be a tailor. When the war broke out, I had no choice. I knew how to sew and make uniforms, so I wasn't starving. My mother and father, they went somewhere else, they liquidated them. I survived Auschwitz because of my father. I was just lucky, just luck.
A letter from my father, Max Entgen, to my family. What I have seen since I arrived in Europe, particularly since coming to Germany, has shaken me to the core. Internment camps. And yet these people still have the will to survive.
But just imagine, these people are living in a refugee camp. It used to be a concentration camp. They're trying to rebuild their lives, let alone their souls. Somebody comes into that place and says, hey, if you're a tailor, we can bring you to Canada. Can you imagine hearing those words? Canada, getting out of here. I can make a life for myself. This isn't the end of the road. These are people who had no hope. They'd lost everything. The only thing they didn't lose was their lives, but their spirits and their families were gone. They had seen terrible things. And the Tailor Project gave them hope that they could start their lives again. And that's what it did for my parents.
These are the letters from my grandfather. Most of them start the same way, Dear Martin. And actually, he signs them off, Papa Dave, which is what we called him. Dear Martin, in late December 1947, I left Southampton for Canada aboard the SS Queen Mary, returning home from Germany and Austria, where I'd been sent by the Canadian government in a team of 5 representatives of management and labor. We were commissioned to examine some 15,000 inmates of Hitler's concentration camps and process 2,500 Tailors with their families for immigration into Canada as part of a worldwide movement to empty the DP camps as soon as possible.
My father and the other members of the team went to as many DP camps as possible to give them hope that possibly they could find a way out of those DP camps, finally, into another country.
So I applied. The test was a little nothing. They just want to know if you could hold the needle on the thimble, and if you saw a few, that's it. It was very easy, nothing at all.
My father told his brother, they need tailors in Canada. Let's go, we're gonna sign up. And his brother said, we're not tailors. And my father said, don't matter, let's put our name on a list. He couldn't sew at all, so he paid somebody to write the exam. And it was just the next step towards survival. How do I get out of here? He gave the man his coordinates, how old he was, what his birthday is. His name is Jonas Schlanger. As he said, I was looking in the window, watching the guy. He'd take a cotton and he put it through the needle. Like this, I know, I come to Canada. When he got here, they wanted to assign him to a sweatshop. And he said, but I'm not a tailor. And they said, well, how did you get here? With the ship, just like everybody else.
The boat was terrible. Everybody was sick. Everybody was throwing up. And I came to Montreal, and I started to work in the factory. Well, I'll tell you the truth, I was happy to come to Canada, and I was happy to be here. And I met a nice girl. I was making a living, had a nice family. I bought a little duplex, and till I retired, I'm okay. I love you too, bye. When I came to Canada, off the boat, I didn't have anything, not one penny.
When I think about having nothing and coming here with nothing, except for maybe my mother's gold ring and my father's gold ring on their fingers, that they went forward. When he got here, he convinced a bank manager to give him a loan, and he started a fish business. Of course, he knew nothing about fish either, just like he didn't know anything about tailoring. But he walked into a place in Kensington Market and put on an apron and walked behind the counter and told the guy, I need to learn about fish. I'm not leaving. You tell me.
Kensington Market, which is the historic heart of the Jewish community in Toronto. It's where the community built its places of worship, its synagogues. I always thought it's sort of interesting that I landed here, just a few blocks from Kensington Market. And when I look out my windows, I can see the Tailor factories where a lot of this history takes place. It is a very Canadian story about overcoming adversity and building new lives.
I believe all of our experiences become who we are. Of course, my mother and father's experiences in the war impacted on how I see the world. And my art expresses how I see the world. I think the colors are deceptive. I think the sadness of my history is inside me, but I don't express it in sadness. I express it in the joy of color and the celebration of being here.
To the best of our knowledge, there ended up to be 2,000 families that were able to come to Canada. And families that arrived, and many of them had 2 and 3 children. We were astounded to see what levels of education and competence and contribution to Canada they in turn have made to this country. I am extremely proud of my father, as I was anyways, but in this direction, he was a great citizen and he did a great service to the Jewish community and ultimately to Canada.
Well, if it wasn't for the Tailor Project, what would this country be missing? All these hardworking immigrants who started again and like my parents who were good citizens and kind people, where would we be? We wouldn't be here. The bottom line is, where would we be?
And Rabbi Yael Splansky, I wish to thank our speakers tonight, the 4 families, for sharing their stories, and the many additional families who are here representing their parents and grandparents. Each one of you is an inheritor of an extraordinary story of love and luck, of survival and resilience, of hard work and of hope. And a special thanks to you, Faye Kiefer. Tonight is the first time she's publicly sharing her story. We know how painful it must be. We can only imagine, in fact. But we are bearing witness to you and your testimonial tonight, and we will remember your story. And we express our deepest gratitude for our dear congregant, Larry Enken, who conceived of this evening of dedication and commemoration. The Tailor Project calls attention to an important moment in Canadian history, an important moment in Jewish history, and we must learn from it. I know that you, Larry, are equally motivated by the mitzvah of Kibud Av Va'em, honoring our parents. With this Tailor Project, you have given us an opportunity to speak your father's Shem Tov, his good name, and to reinforce his lasting legacy of loyalty and leadership. We are so grateful to you. You teach us what Holy Blossom Temple has stood for and how we must continue to rise to the occasion of courageous and compassionate leadership, which is so desperately needed now in our own time. Our congregation, Toronto's first synagogue, has devoted itself to refugee relief and immigrant resettlement since our founding in 1856. Whether Jew or non-Jew, newcomers have always been the focus of our care and concern. Vietnamese boat people, Soviet Jewry, Muslims and Yazidis from Syria, and I'm so pleased to welcome some of these new Canadians with us tonight. We are so blessed to live in this good country. Today's Canada is to the world an example of how a country shaped by its principles can be both open and secure. Let me share with you just a few words about the honorary life president, Max Enken, so that we might each take up something of his example. They say clothes make the man. Max Enken, alav hashalom, was the man who made the clothes that made the man. Moreover, when the world was still reeling from the devastations of war, Max Enken realized that making the clothes could actually be the way to rescue a man. He and his partners became the men who rescued the men who made the clothes, who made the men, women, and children of Canada. Rabbi Gunther Plaut of blessed memory wrote these words about his friend. Max Enken was small in stature, but large in vision. He did not pursue honor, but honors pursued him. He was a Jew to the core. But, or perhaps because of it, non-Jews were attracted to him. His reputation for unbending integrity, the esteem in which his co-workers as well as his competitors held him in the fashion field, his many honors, among them the Order of the British Empire and the Order of Canada, all these were signposts of a career to which any man would point with justifiable pride, except that Max Enken never pointed to himself. He was self-made, yet utterly modest. his greatest asset was not material wealth, but a good and noble heart. He had above all a way of looking at life's problems from a religious perspective. He considered ethics the heart of Reform Judaism, and many was the time when he would ask me, "Rabbi, what does Judaism require of me in this situation? What does Judaism require of me in this situation?" In a way, that was the secret of Max Enken's influence. He asked Jewish questions. And Rabbi Dov Marmer gave the eulogy in 1990. Max Enken was a great Canadian. This country meant very much to him. His aim was to integrate the Jewish with the general, so that nothing of what is best in Judaism be squandered, and nothing of what is good in Canada may be lost. The combination of a sense of obligation, a disdain for outwardness, a stress on ethical conduct and truth, and a deep love for his people brought him to Holy Blossom Temple. He was a giant among men, the undisputed father of this house, this temple, and indeed the house of Reform Judaism. He was a model for generations of our leaders, a symbol of what so many strive to become. I'm told that before and during the war, Max Enken banged on every door at Queen's Park and on every desk in Parliament Hill. But even he, with his many skills, could not break through the fierce anti-Semitism of the day of none is too many. He would not be deterred. He would not rest until he found a way to bring his Jewish brothers and sisters to safe haven. As a young immigrant himself, he knew how fortunate he was and that it could have just as easily have been otherwise. How we long for his guidance today. Let an echo of his wisdom steer us. Let us be blessed with a measure of his imagination and his determination. Let us find a way to his clarity of vision, his loyalty to God and country, his deep-seated love for the Jewish people and for Israel. Let us find ourselves walking in Max Enken's footsteps to strengthen one another at this hour when we once again search for confidence and calm. I want to call attention to the everlasting light, which is just behind the screen here. That Ner Tamid is a replica of the eternal light of the Tailor Synagogue of Essen, Germany. The original was destroyed on Kristallnacht, the night of shattered glass. This one, Max Enken dedicated on Rosh Hashanah, September 5th, 1946, 1 year after the war, 1 year into his presidency, here at Holy Blossom Temple. There were no prayers then. There were no history books yet written. We could barely speak of the number 6 million. And so what could he do? What could we do but to light a light? Who could believe that after all that was lost and after all that was learned, today we have to face the recent news of such an ugly anti-Semitism? We thank our elected officials for pledging to uproot any hint of this most pernicious and tenacious evil, root it out wherever it may lurk. We hear you when you pledge to protect all citizens from gun violence and to ensure that all houses of faith can be houses of peace. And please, God, let our sanctuaries be sanctuaries once again. In just a moment, we will light 6 candles to remember the 6 million. And we will sing the haunting melody of Anim Amin, I believe. These are the words that some of the 6 million sang as they walked to their deaths. Anima Amin, I believe with a perfect faith in the coming of the messianic age of peace for all the world. Ve'afal pi sheyitmamea, and even if it should be delayed in its coming, despite all this, I still believe. Larry Ankin, together with our Prime Minister, will light this first candle, and the remaining 5 will be lit by members of our congregation who are sons and daughters of the Tailors. They are Faye Greenholtz, Daniel and Abby Bloomberger, Eva Madras, Ann Dublin, and past president of Holy Blossom Temple, Morris Cooper, who just yesterday heard the good news of a grandchild. Please rise.
Mazel tov to everyone who had any part of organizing this truly remarkable and memorable evening. It's an evening that none of us will forget. And before we came in, Rabbi Splansky said to her that the common thread was of memories and courage and leadership. And on the eve of Yom HaShoah, when we never forget the 6 million Jews that were killed, that tonight we will remember the amazing, remarkable courage and leadership of the founders of the Tailor Project. And as it says on the slide, hashtag always remember. This is now part of the fabric of the history of Canada, for which we can be so proud. And as Larry Ankin reminded us, that we had to bring this into the Canada of today. And so tonight I want to thank Holy Blossom Temple and Rabbi Splansky for what you have done in the initiation of the Ring of Peace around the Ismadul Center after the tragic shooting in Quebec City. And then sadly we were there again after Christchurch And it's my honor to introduce someone who understands about the importance of history and memories, and therefore the apology of the St. Louis, the leadership around the refugees, and the courage to call out hatred in all of its forms. And as the Prime Minister reminds us every day, better is always possible, but the diversity is our strength, and therefore it is my great honor to introduce the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada.
Thank you, Carolyn, for your kind words, and thank you for all that you do as Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with all of you, including my colleagues, Minister Bennett and Minister Hussain. I'd like to thank Larry Aiken, Impact Labs, Rabbi Yael Slansky, and Holy Blossom Temple for hosting this event, of course, as well as the Tailor Project for all the incredible work that they do. I also need to thank Eva Madras and Max Dublin, Ed and Isaac Asselbaum, and Faye Kiefer for their courage, their stories, and the extraordinary inspiration their courage, their strength, and their connection to family reminds us of. Your words, your stories will echo for a long time in my life, and I know in the lives of everyone who is blessed to be here tonight with all of you. Tonight, as we mark the beginning of Yom HaShoah, we remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered by the Nazis. We promise never again. This is all the more important in light of the horrific anti-Semitic shooting that took place in Poway, California, just this past weekend. On Shabbat, the last day of Passover, Jews were targeted yet again by a despicable act of hatred, an act of violence in a synagogue, a place of prayer and peace. It was another painful reminder that anti-Semitism is sadly not just a thing of the past. It's actually on the rise. As Faye Kiefer just said, we are members of a new generation. That means we all have a duty to stand against such despicable acts of violence and anti-Semitism wherever they are found, and that love and compassion guide our actions. But we must also act and make it clear that we cannot and will not tolerate this any longer. Your testimonies give meaning to the phrase, never forget, to the pledge we took when we discovered the horrors of the Holocaust more than 70 years ago. But they also shine light on the government of the day's shameful treatment of Jewish refugees who paid the ultimate price of our inaction. We closed not only our borders, but also our hearts to the plight of the world's most vulnerable. And while time has by no means absolved Canada of its guilt or lessened the weight of its shame, our country has grown far more compassionate. Le Canada qu'on connaît aujourd'hui est une terre d'accueil pour des milliers de gens venus de partout dans le monde. Pour des jeunes à la recherche d'emploi et d'opportunités. Pour des grands-parents qui fuient leur patrie à cause de la guerre et des conflits. Pour des parents qui veulent donner le meilleur du monde à leurs enfants. Ils sont devenus voisins, amis, collègues et concitoyens. Mais si le Canada que nous connaissons aujourd'hui est beaucoup plus ouvert et accueillant qu'avant, c'est en partie grâce aux initiatives comme le Tailor Project. Grâce à des gens comme vos parents et vos grands-parents qui incarnent l'essence même de notre pays, l'espoir, la persévérance. et la compassion. You know better than anyone there's a lot more to immigration than just entering a country. Survivors and their families tonight brought into sharp focus just how challenging it can be to adjust to a new life in Canada and why it's so important to have a community to lean on. For newcomers, finding work can be a turning point. I'm not just talking about paying the bills. What we do is a big part of who we are. People lose their job because of persecution, or have to give up their career to come to Canada. The impact on their sense of self can be substantial and make integration even more difficult. That's why the work you do here is so important. By connecting newcomers to employers, you're helping people take pride in this new life they are building for themselves. But I know that the success of initiatives like the Tailor Project also hinges on close collaboration with industry leaders and governments. You need partners who share your values, partners who will help create an environment where newcomers feel welcomed and can thrive. And our government is proud to support a number of initiatives designed to do just that. My friends, Canadians are generous, welcoming, and compassionate people. They deserve an entire community in a country that always shares their values. Immigrants and their descendants have helped build Canada. There is no doubt in my mind that without their hard work, their dreams, and their perseverance, this country wouldn't be anywhere near as great as it is today. The success of our nation attests to the fact that diversity is a tremendous source of strength for those brave enough to see that. That newcomers enrich our communities and then strengthen our society. That here, citizenship is defined by principles and ideals, not by race or by faith. So let me be clear. When it comes to immigration, I truly hope that Canada will always choose compassion and understanding. As a government, we will continue to work hard with initiatives like the Tailor Project and the private sector to foster an environment where immigrants can thrive and continue to make positive contributions to this country. This is not just what we Canadians do. It's who we are. Being here tonight to talk about the Tailor Project with you on Yom HaShoah is especially meaningful as it bears witness to the courage of over 40,000 survivors who came to Canada after the war with nothing, built new lives, and helped create a better Canada for all Canadians. By telling the stories of the Holocaust, we make sure that these experiences of profound resilience, unspeakable suffering, and tremendous loss are never forgotten, and instead help propel us forward together. Once again, I want to thank you for the warm welcome and commend you all for the incredible work you do for this country. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, everybody, we're in the home stretch here. Actually, I'm going to go off script for a second. I'm going to go off script just for a second here because it's occurred to me that 47 years ago, my mother, Marnie Pagan, was chair of a committee that was responsible for organizing and welcoming the 15th Prime Minister of Canada to Hamilton for a special occasion that was happening there. And it's just kind of cool that 47 years later, Marnie Payton's kid is up here shaking hands with the 23rd Prime Minister of Canada involved in an event here. We're sort of Star Trek The Next Generation here, Prime Minister, something like that. And I see Bernie Baskin in the front row here. 99-year-old Bernie Baskin, the former Rabbi at Temple Anshe Shalom in Hamilton, who bar mitzvahed me. Okay. Long time ago. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of the Tailor Project continues, so stay tuned for the book, for the documentary launch next year. Visit the website, thetailorproject.com, for more details, and you'll also be able to relive the glory that was tonight's event. It's all going to be there. Now, there are 2 receptions after the program ends. I'll tell you about those in a second. I'm going to beg your indulgence. The Prime Minister wants to meet some of the families that are involved tonight. So please, just remain in your seats until he has an opportunity to do that and is able to leave safely. We don't want to cause a stampede here this evening. I want to direct the Tailor Project family members, yes? I obviously misspoke. Stand by. Okay, is that happening now? This is happening now. Stand by. And then I back and wrap up? I can never keep this stuff straight. Okay. Paul's going to come up. Paul, come on. This is your baby. You got a presentation? Thank you. I'm normally very good at taking direction, but you know. Paul, is the microphone yours? Thank you. There you go. Okay.
Thank you, Steve. And all I can say, needless to say, these are very hard acts to follow. I am so honored and grateful to be here tonight. I'm so happy everyone is here joining us. Of course, I'd like to first acknowledge the Prime Minister of Canada and all the dignitaries who are here this evening, Rabbi Slansky, Larry Ankin, Steve Hagan, but especially the families who shared their stories with us here tonight, and their families. Thank you. There's also someone who a lot of families have spoken to, who is a treasured member of our team at Impact, without whom all of us would not be here tonight. I want to give a special thank you to Nicole Brick. Stand up. I call Nicole the heart and soul of this project, and it's for a good reason. Larry, your father, Max, along with others on the selection committee, who have been mentioned before, but I'll mention them again because they're so important, Sam Hurst, Sam Hoslands, Bernard Shane, and David Solomon, made it possible for thousands of people to rebuild their lives in this remarkable country. In spite of their incredible achievement, without you, the stories of the families who are here tonight would have remained untold. And in fact, I believe you are the common thread that's made this happen and brought us all here together at Holy Blossom tonight. I actually first heard about the Tailor Project in Larry's apartment. It was in 2017, late 2017. And needless to say, I think I can speak for both of us, we have no idea that we'd all be here tonight with all of you and helping to tell what we call a made in Canada story. It was made in Canada in 1948, and it's made in Canada today. And we have to all celebrate that. It's also a story that's been globally significant. During the development of this project, we've had incredible contacts with organizations such as the Weenhill Library in London, the Holocaust Remembrance Museum at Auschwitz, Yad Vashem, and others around the world, the Tenement Museum in New York, and the HaShoah Foundation in California. And this event, in case you don't know, is being live streamed, so people around the world are able to watch it, including many people who are associated with those most important organizations around the world. Needless to say, in spite of last week's tragedy, I think it's even more important that we remember the stories of Tailors and their families this evening. And as the Prime Minister said a few minutes ago, this country is a country of hope, compassion, and tolerance that has made welcoming refugees and immigrants a priority. And I'm deeply grateful to the Prime Minister and our government for their leadership in this area. Here at Holy Blossom, as Rabbi Splansky said earlier, this is a congregation that has also welcomed refugees, sponsored refugee families, and that's also something that we ought to be very proud of. Last year, when we started to interview many of the people who are here tonight, survivors and families of the Tailors, Nicole and Larry and I started to meet with these people and hear their stories, and it was remarkable right from the beginning. But quite early on, we started asking ourselves, wonder if this might, with their experience and what I would call social innovation of the Tailor Project from 1948, might apply to the needs and situations of refugees today. And what we discovered is that that was 70 years ago. Today, many of the refugees face the same issues and challenges that these Tailors and your families faced when you came here after the war. And we heard some of them tonight: lack of skills in English, lack of secure temporary housing, and inadequate employment. So we also discovered that it was so remarkable, and I'll introduce my colleague Sam in a minute. When we started to look more closely at the refugees today, we found a remarkable thing. We found that tailoring skills were extremely prevalent. In fact, by the third most prevalent skill many of the refugees have come into this country with, except that very few of them were being employed using those skills. So tonight, in addition to celebrating the Tailors and their families, we're also recognizing new beginnings and new opportunities for people who have come to Canada much more recently. So I'd like to introduce my amazing colleague, Sam Bennett, who's going to tell you about how we're bringing the Tailor Project full circle with a new social enterprise that will create meaningful employment for refugees today. Sam?
Thank you and good evening. So over the past few months, we've been working with a fantastic refugee-led nonprofit. It's called Jumpstart Refugee Talent, to help us locate today's refugee tailors already living in Canada. Tonight, I'm very proud to introduce you to one of these tailors. Mohammed is an ethnic Kurd who, with his family, who's here today, fled the war in Syria and is home in Aleppo a few years ago. With over 20 years of experience as a tailor, Mohammed, along with a handful of other Syrian tailors, has been prototyping designs while we incubated a new social enterprise. As Paul just mentioned and as Larry alluded to earlier, we are pleased to announce a new tailored shirt company that harnesses the fantastic but latent skills of Mohammed and our team. We are incredibly honored to carry forward some of the lessons from 1948 and would like to take this opportunity to present our very first shirt to Prime Minister Trudeau. So if you would, please join me in welcoming Mohammed, who's here today, and Prime Minister to the stage.
going to reintroduce Steve Paikin.
Now I'm afraid to say anything. Nicole, do we do hot take for now? That's next? Okay. You want to give us a chord? Stand as you are able, everybody, and let's do hot tikva. Cousin can still hit the high note. That's a beautiful thing. Okay. I would like to, just sit for another 30 seconds while I just remind everybody, 2 receptions. We're going to direct the Tailor Project. Is this okay? Nicole, am I doing the right thing? She's not paying attention. I'm doing it anyway. Tailor Project family members to a special reception, lower level, Philip Smith Atrium, located out the sanctuary doors and down the stairs. A welcome to everybody else who wants to join us in the new atrium for an exhibit and a reception. God bless everybody. Thank you and good night. And remember, we're going to let the PM do his thing up here first, so everybody sit tight.